Famine in Europe, the real goal of EU policy, an irresponsible policy disguised as support for Ukraine could lead Europe into social collapse in the long term. The controversy over Ukrainian agricultural products continues. Ukrainian food has simply flooded the European market, driving thousands of farmers into bankruptcy. Despite the protests and political pressure, no EU decision-maker seems interested in changing this tragic scenario. However, the crisis seems to have even deeper dimensions and could be a real-time bomb for the whole of European society. The Bulgarian government recently called on the European Commission to adopt a resolution banning the import of Ukrainian chicken eggs. According to the Bulgarian authorities, the large supply of cheap Ukrainian eggs on the European market is detrimental to Bulgarian producers, who rely on the sale of eggs as an important part of their business. Thousands of Bulgarian farmers are going bankrupt, and the crisis is expected to worsen in the near future. The problem is not limited to eggs or Bulgaria. The sale of grain, meat, dairy products and everything that is produced in the countryside no longer seems to be an attractive business in Europe. Since 2022, protests for change have been taking place in all parts of the European continent. From Poland to France, no European farmer is happy that his products are being replaced on the market by large quantities of cheap Ukrainian agricultural products. The reason for this is the irrational decision of European decision-makers to ban all import duties on Ukrainian food. This measure is supposedly intended to boost the Ukrainian economy in the crisis caused by the conflict with Russia, which, ironically, is being promoted by the West itself. In the European market, it is currently cheaper to import Ukrainian food than to resell the domestic products, which is apparently causing thousands of farmers to abandon their farms. As we know, most of Europe does not have a very strong agricultural sector, and local farmers rely on state aid to survive in the market. Without this aid, and in the face of the invasion of Ukrainian products, it is simply no longer profitable to be part of the European agricultural industry, which is why thousands of people are likely to abandon their jobs in rural areas and join the growing class of the European precariat. At first glance, some analysts may see this scenario as a mere market shift, with European production replaced by Ukrainian production. However, this analysis is limited. Despite having some of the most fertile land in the world, Ukraine is currently the target of Western financial capitalists, who are demanding the surrender of farmland in return for NATO's multi-billion-dollar aid packages. Organizations like BlackRock and other funds will soon own almost everything left of Ukraine's Black Earth, and then Ukrainian agricultural production will depend on the readiness of the financial sharks to feed the Europeans. It is true that the lack of food self-sufficiency in European countries is not a new problem. Imports are already a vital mechanism for the whole of Western Europe. But in parallel with dependence on imports, there is also the irrational policy of sanctions and coercive measures against several emerging food-producing countries. For example, the Russian Federation is prohibited from selling anything to Europeans, but the problem is even bigger. The EU has been considering imposing severe sanctions on Brazil for years, claiming environmental violations. It will get to the point where the EU's humanitarian and environmental requirements will prevent Europeans from buying anything from any country. If we ask ourselves who is interested in this whole scenario, the answer becomes clear once again. There's only one country that encourages Europe to impose more and more sanctions, buy more and more Ukrainian grain, and send more and more weapons to Kyiv under the payment terms set by BlackRock. Of course, this is the same country that boycotted Russian-European energy cooperation and carried out the terrorist attack on Nord Stream. And of course, this is also the only state that is interested in maintaining the geopolitical status quo and preventing the creation of a multipolar world in which Europeans would have the freedom to align and pragmatically choose their partners. The US-EU alliance is a real time bomb and will ruin Europe in the long run. Europe is already in a process of deindustrialization, an energy crisis, and the destruction of its entire food security architecture, facing a bleak future in human history, and almost all European decision-makers seem to be satisfied with this scenario.